Something is broken inside Lioness. Not a mission, not a mistake. Something worse. In episode 3, the show finally says it out loud. There is a breach. Someone let the enemy in. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly how big that breach really is, and why almost nobody inside the program is safe from suspicion anymore. Let's start with what the breach actually means, because this word gets thrown around a lot in spy shows. But here, it means something very specific and very scary. A breach means the enemy did not get lucky. They did not stumble onto Joe's team by accident. Someone on the inside gave them a way in. That is the only way a mission this careful, this well-planned, this deeply protected could fall apart the way it did. Think about everything we already saw happen to Joe. She was taken. She was held. The rescue that was supposed to save her did not go the way anyone expected, and people paid a heavy price for it. Now ask yourself a simple question. How did the people who took Joe know where to find her? How did they know when she would be alone, when backup would be delayed, when the timing would work in their favor? Missions like this do not fail because of bad luck. They fail because someone talked. And that is exactly what episode 3 forces the team to face. The official description of this episode tells us Joe is dealing with a breach, and it pushes the team into a risky plan to find whoever let the enemy inside. That single sentence changes everything about how we should be watching this season. Up until now, we have been focused on outside enemies, foreign operatives, dangerous missions in dangerous places. But now the danger has moved inside the walls. It is no longer about who Joe is fighting out there. It is about who she cannot trust in here. And that shift is what makes this episode so tense. Because in a spy story, an outside enemy is scary, but an inside enemy is terrifying. You can prepare for outside enemies. You train for them, you plan for them, you build defenses against them. But you cannot fully defend yourself against someone who is already inside your circle, someone who has your trust, someone who knows your schedule, your weaknesses, your next move before you make it. That is what a traitor is. Not just someone working against you, but someone working against you while pretending to work with you. And once that idea is out in the open, every single person around Joe becomes a question mark. Every conversation from earlier episodes suddenly looks different. Every small decision, every private moment, every piece of information that reached the wrong hands at the wrong time, all of it needs to be looked at again with new eyes. This is why episode 3 is being called a turning point for the season. It is not just another mission episode. It is the episode where the show stops asking who the enemy is outside and starts asking who the enemy is inside. Now let's talk about why this breach could not have happened by accident, because this is the part that really should worry you. Operations like the ones Joe runs are built on secrecy. Very few people know the full picture at any given time. Information is usually split up, shared only with the people who absolutely need it, and protected through layers of security that are designed exactly to stop leaks like this from happening. So, when something goes wrong at the level we saw with Joe's capture, it usually means one of two things. Either the security systems themselves failed on a technical level, which is possible, but far less interesting and far less likely given how this season has been building tension around trust and betrayal, or someone with real access made a choice to share what they should have protected. And when you look at how personal this season has been from the very beginning, the second option feels much more likely. Remember, the setup for this entire season was built around the idea that hidden networks and personal betrayals would collide with Joe's professional world. That is not just a side detail, that is basically the show telling us in advance what kind of danger we should expect. It is not only foreign operatives working from the outside, it is someone close, someone trusted, someone who has been sitting inside meetings, inside plans, inside the small circle of people who know things before anyone else does. That is what makes a traitor so dangerous in a story like this. They are not hiding in the shadows far away. They are sitting right next to Joe, maybe smiling at her, maybe even comforting her after everything she has been through, all while knowing exactly what role they played in putting her there in the first place. Think about how painful that would be if it turns out to be true. Joe has already been through captivity. She has already lived through a rescue that did not go as planned. And now she may have to sit across from someone she trusts, someone she has worked beside for a long time, and realize that this person helped cause all of it. That is not just a spy twist. That is a personal wound. It changes the entire emotional weight of the season because now every scene between Jo and the people around her carries a hidden question. Is this person loyal, or is this person the reason she almost did not make it home? And the scary part is, we as the audience do not know the answer yet either. We are watching with the same uncertainty Jo is feeling, which is exactly why this breach storyline pulls you in so hard. You are not just watching a mystery unfold, you are trying to solve it right alongside her, looking for the same small clues, the same strange behavior, the same moments that do not quite add up. So who could actually be behind this? Let's slow down and think about this carefully, because in stories like this, the answer is almost never the person who looks the most suspicious on the surface. Good writers do not make it that easy. If someone has been acting strange, nervous, distant, or obviously guilty, there is a good chance that person is meant to distract you from the real traitor, not reveal them. That is a classic trick, and Taylor Sheridan's style shows love using it. So instead of asking who looks guilty, we should be asking a different question. Who benefits from Jo being weaker right now? Who benefits from the team being distracted, confused, and turning against each other while trying to figure out who the traitor is? A real traitor does not just want information. A real traitor wants chaos, because chaos hides them even further. Think about the people closest to Jo right now, the ones guiding her, protecting her, supporting her through everything that has happened. In a show built around trust and betrayal colliding, the most emotionally powerful reveal is almost never a stranger. It is someone who has earned Jo's trust over time, someone whose betrayal would actually hurt to watch, not just surprise us. That is the kind of reveal that sticks with an audience long after the episode ends. It is also worth remembering that a traitor does not have to be working for money or for a foreign power out of pure evil. Sometimes the most dangerous traitors are the ones who believe they had no other choice. Maybe someone was threatened. Maybe someone was protecting a person they love. Maybe someone made one small compromise a long time ago that slowly grew into something much bigger than they ever intended. These kinds of traitors are the hardest to hate completely, because part of you understands why they did what they did, even while you are furious about the damage it caused. That complexity is what makes this kind of storyline so much more interesting than a simple good guy versus bad guy plot. It forces the audience to sit with uncomfortable feelings, to feel sympathy and anger at the same time, and that emotional mix is exactly what keeps people talking about a show long after they finish watching it. So as you think about who this traitor might be, do not just look for the obvious villain. Look for the person whose betrayal would hurt the most. That is usually where the truth is hiding. Let's bring this back to Jo, because at the center of all this theory and mystery, there is a real person going through something incredibly painful. She survived captivity. She survived a rescue that clearly did not go smoothly. And now, instead of being allowed to heal, she has to turn around and hunt for an enemy that might be standing right beside her. That is an exhausting position to be in. Imagine going through the worst experience of your life, finally making it out, and then immediately being told you cannot fully trust the people around you while you recover. There is no safe space left for her, not even among her own team. And this is where the show becomes more than just an action thriller. It becomes a story about the cost of doing this kind of work. Jo is not just fighting an outside threat anymore. She is fighting the fear of being betrayed by someone close to her, which is a completely different kind of battle. Physical danger is something she has trained for her entire career. But emotional betrayal, the kind that comes from someone you trusted, is a wound that training cannot fully prepare you for. This is why the risky plan mentioned in the episode description matters so much. The team is not just running a normal operation here. They are being pushed into a high-pressure situation specifically designed to force the traitor out into the open. That means mistakes are more likely. Emotions are running high. People are on edge, watching each other, questioning each other, and that kind of pressure often causes people to make choices they would not normally make. It also means the traitor, whoever they are, is now cornered. And cornered people tend to be the most dangerous because they have the most to lose. So going into this episode, keep your eyes open not just on the big dramatic moments, but on the small ones too. Watch how people react when Joe is in danger. Watch who hesitates, who stays a little too calm, who seems a little too eager to help solve the case. Sometimes the biggest clues in a story like this are hidden in the quiet reactions, not the loud ones. And when the truth finally comes out, whether it happens in this episode or later in the season, it is going to hit differently because of everything Joe has already sacrificed to get here. Let's think about who could actually be behind this, and let's do it the smart way instead of the obvious way. In almost every story like this, the person who looks the most guilty on the surface is rarely the real traitor. Good writers do not make it that simple. If someone has been acting nervous, distant, or strange, there is a strong chance that person is there to distract you, not to give you the real answer. That is an old trick, but it still works because our brains naturally jump toward whoever seems suspicious first. So, instead of asking who looks guilty, we should be asking a completely different question. Who actually benefits from Joe being weak right now? Who benefits from the whole team being distracted, confused, and turning against each other while they try to figure out who leaked the information? A real traitor does not just want secrets. A real traitor wants confusion, because confusion hides them even deeper. The messier things get, the safer they feel. Now think about the people who are closest to Joe at this point in the story. The ones guiding her, the ones protecting her, the ones she leans on after everything she has been through. In a show that was built from the very beginning around trust colliding with betrayal, the most powerful reveal is almost never a random outsider. It is someone who has already earned Joe's trust over time, someone whose betrayal would actually hurt to watch, not just shock us for a moment and then be forgotten. That is the kind of twist that stays in your mind long after the episode ends, because it does not just surprise you, it wounds you a little too, the same way it wounds Joe. It also helps to remember something important. A traitor does not always have to be evil or greedy. Sometimes the most dangerous traitors are the ones who honestly believe they had no other choice. Maybe someone was threatened. Maybe someone was protecting a person they love more than they care about the mission. Maybe one small compromise made a long time ago for what felt like a good reason slowly grew into something much bigger and much darker than they ever meant it to become. These kinds of traitors are hard to hate completely because part of you understands why they did it, even while you are angry about the damage they caused. That mix of anger and understanding is what makes a betrayal storyline so much more powerful than a simple good guy versus bad guy plot. It forces you to feel two things at once, and that kind of emotional pull is exactly what makes people keep thinking about a show long after the episode ends. There is another angle worth considering here too. Sometimes the traitor is not even fully aware of how much damage they have caused. They might think they only shared one small detail, one seemingly harmless piece of information, not realizing how it connected to something much bigger. In their mind, they may not even see themselves as a traitor at all. They may see themselves as someone who was just trying to survive, or trying to protect someone, or trying to stay out of a dangerous situation. But intentions do not change outcomes. Whether they meant for it to go this far or not, the result is the same. Joe was taken. People were hurt. Trust was broken. And now the whole team has to live with the consequences of that one choice, no matter how small it may have felt at the time. So, as you go into this episode looking for answers, do not just search for the person who seems the most obviously guilty. Search for the person whose betrayal would hurt the most if it turned out to be true. Look for the quiet ones, the reliable ones, the ones nobody would ever suspect first, because those are usually the moments that hit the hardest. Here is something you need to sit with for a second. What if the traitor is not one person, but the reveal about them is not even the biggest twist waiting in this episode? What if the real shock is not who they are, but what they were actually trying to protect all along? That is the kind of turn this season has been quietly building toward, and it is worth walking through carefully before the episode airs. Let's start with the most obvious twist everyone is expecting, because even though it is expected, it still matters. The show has spent 2 full episodes making us believe the danger to Joe was coming from the outside. Foreign operatives, hidden networks, enemies working from a distance. That was the story we were told to believe. But the moment the word breach gets used, everything shifts. A breach is not an outside attack. A breach is an inside failure. It means someone who was supposed to be protecting information instead let it slip out, whether on purpose or by accident. That single shift, from outside threat to inside threat, is already a twist on its own, even before we know who is responsible. It changes the entire shape of the season. Every scene we watched before this episode now needs to be looked at differently, because somewhere in those quiet moments, someone was already making a choice that would put Joe in danger. Now, let's talk about the twist most people will not see coming, which is the idea that the traitor might not be acting alone. Shows like this rarely build a betrayal storyline around just one guilty person quietly working behind the scenes. It is far more common and far more interesting for there to be a small chain of people involved, where one person passes along something small without realizing where it will end up, and someone else uses that information for a much bigger purpose. This means the person who technically caused the breach might not even be the true villain of the story. They might be someone who made one small, understandable mistake, trusted the wrong person, or shared something they thought was harmless. If that turns out to be true, the real twist is not discovering who talked. The real twist is discovering who they talked to and why that person wanted the information in the first place. That kind of layered betrayal is much more emotionally complicated than a simple villain reveal, because it forces the audience to feel sympathy for someone who still caused real harm. Another major twist worth preparing for is the possibility that the breach connects directly back to Joe's own family life. Remember, the setup for this entire season made it clear that Joe's professional world and her personal world were going to blur together in dangerous ways. That was not just a passing detail. That was practically a warning from the writers about where this story is heading. If the traitor turns out to be someone connected to Joe's home life, rather than someone from her professional circle, that changes everything. It means the danger was never fully separate from her family in the first place. It means every quiet dinner, every private conversation, every moment that felt safe because it happened away from work, might have actually been part of the danger the entire time. That kind of twist does not just shock the audience. It reshapes how we understand every earlier scene involving Joe's home and the people in it. There is also a very real possibility that the show uses this episode to twist our understanding of who the victim really is. Right now, it feels obvious that Joe is the one who suffered the most because of this breach. She was taken. She was hurt. She had to be rescued. But what if the traitor also lost something painful because of the choices they made? What if part of the twist is learning that the person responsible for the breach did not walk away clean either? Maybe they lost someone they loved. Maybe they were forced into an impossible choice where every option led to someone getting hurt. If the show reveals that the traitor is suffering just as much as Joe, even if their pain looks different, it completely changes how the audience is supposed to feel about them. Instead of simple anger, we start feeling a mix of anger and understanding, which is often far more powerful and far more memorable. Let's also consider the twist involving trust within the leadership itself. Joe has been guided through this entire season by people she is supposed to fully trust, people positioned as steady, reliable, protective figures. But what if the twist is not about a traitor hiding among the lower ranks, someone easy to suspect because they have less power? What if the twist is that the danger comes from someone much higher up, someone whose betrayal would be far more damaging because of how much access and influence they actually have? A traitor near the top of the chain is far more dangerous than a traitor near the bottom, because they are not just leaking small details. They could be shaping entire decisions, entire strategies, entire missions, all while pretending to guide Joe safely through danger. If this turns out to be the direction the show takes, it does not just create shock. It creates a much deeper sense of unease because it means the people we trusted the most as an audience were never fully trustworthy either. Now, here is a twist that often gets overlooked in stories like this, but tends to hit incredibly hard when it happens. What if the person suspected first, the one who seems the most obviously guilty throughout the episode, actually turns out to be innocent? And the real damage they cause comes not from betrayal, but from being wrongly accused. Think about how painful that would be. Someone already dealing with suspicion, distrust, and isolation from the people they used to be close with, even though they did nothing wrong. That kind of twist does not just surprise the audience. It creates real emotional weight because it shows how deeply the fear of betrayal can damage relationships even when no actual betrayal took place. Sometimes the destruction caused by suspicion is just as painful as the destruction caused by an actual traitor. And finally, let's talk about the twist that could shape the rest of the season completely. The moment where Joe realizes that catching the traitor does not actually solve the real problem. Even if the team successfully identifies who leaked the information, that does not mean the danger is over. It might mean the opposite. It might mean this was only the first thread in a much larger and much more complicated web, one designed to make everyone believe the problem has been solved, while the real threat continues working quietly in the background. If the show ends this episode with a satisfying reveal, only to hint that something bigger is still hiding, that would be one of the most effective twists it could deliver, because it keeps the tension alive instead of closing it off completely. So as we look at all of these possible directions, one thing becomes very clear. The real major twist in this episode may not be a single dramatic reveal at all. It may be the slow realization that trust itself has become the most dangerous thing in Joe's life right now. Every person close to her carries a small piece of doubt attached to them now, and that doubt does not disappear even after one name is revealed. That lingering uncertainty is what will keep viewers talking, theorizing, and rewatching scenes long after this episode ends. Because the biggest twist a story like this can deliver is not just telling you who the traitor is, it is making you realize you can never be fully sure again.